As the night progressed, the atmosphere shifted from light-hearted amusement to a more somber tone. Her laughter had masked more than just her face, it had hidden the undercurrents of gossip and judgment that trailed her since the party, while music played in the background. "That woman was hilarious," she mimicked, recounting the gossip, tripping on her own dress because of her mask. "She even knocked over all the tables," she continued, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Frederick, wearing a mask of neutrality, stood before her with a patience that seemed to stretch the very fabric of the tense atmosphere between them. "And it happened just when things were getting boring, too. That was amusing to watch," she added, holding her wine glass. "Now that we're home, let's drink some more." "I'm not ready to end the night yet," she said, pouring herself more wine only to find the bottle empty. "Frederick, go bring me more wine," she demanded. "You've already had plenty at the party," Frederick intervened, his voice a blend of worry and admonishment. "I think that's enough for today," he continued, taking the empty wine bottle from her hands, his concern extending beyond just the alcohol consumption. "You've seemed unhappy since the party," she remarked, prompting his introspection. "Why? Is it because people were murmuring behind my back earlier?" she questioned, her vulnerability peeking through her facade. The mention of the whispers, the murmured judgments, seemed to pierce through her more effectively than any sobering truth Frederick could have offered. "I know what they're whispering behind my back," she confessed, the words from the party echoing in her mind, a cruel reminder of the precarious pedestal upon which she found herself. "That evil girl," the gossip continued to haunt her, "she barely got back on her feet because of her husband, and she has the audacity to have an affair." This revelation, raw and unguarded, hung between them like a specter. It was a moment of truth that stripped away the facades, the masks they wore not just for the world but perhaps for each other. Frederick's response could shape the course of their night further into realms of understanding or down a darker path. The room, once filled with laughter and remnants of party music, now held a different kind of dialogue, one that could either mend or further fray the fabric of their relationship. In this moment, Frederick and Lady Serena stood at a crossroads, the outcome of which hinged on words yet spoken, decisions yet made. "You know those types of girls. They just live however they want," the gossip persisted. "She's rich, young and pretty. Life must be so easy for her," they added, almost bitterly. Lady Serena's response was cool and measured, a hint of weariness in her tone. "So what? I've been hearing that for years," she replied, choosing not to correct the misconceptions swirling around her. "She has the hotel and huge mansion she inherited to herself. Although what use is being rich when your family is dead? She's the only one that survived," the murmurs continued. "It's not like they're wrong," Lady Serena conceded, her indifference cutting through the gossip. "I know we should actually feel sorry for her, and now that she's married, she's completely changed. Just look at how she conducts herself," the whispers persisted. Lady Serena didn't bother to correct the misconceptions swirling around her, like the idea that she married her husband solely for him to manage her hotel business, or that their marriage was nothing but a business arrangement, devoid of any real connection. They were practically strangers in the eyes of the world. Frederick was silenced by her indifference. "Even so, that's no excuse for her behavior. How can she do that when she has a husband? She has no shame," the gossip continued. "You seem upset, Lady Serena," Frederick ventured cautiously, seeking to understand her true feelings. Her reaction was swift and startling. With a fierce look, she grabbed him by the hair, the sound of shattering glass marking the demise of her wine glass, pulling him down to his knees. "Don't speak to me like that. You were the one who appeared upset first," she hissed, her grip unyielding. Maintaining her hold, she swiftly removed his mask as the mask dropped to the floor, her eyes narrowing in a silent warning. "I'll get angry if you keep looking at me that way," she threatened, her voice low and dangerous, revealing Frederick's true face. Releasing his hair, Lady Serena then seized his tie, pulling him close enough that his breath became strained. "So stop testing me, and bring me more wine," she demanded, her command brooking no argument. Suddenly the door opened and a maid carrying a bottle of wine came in. "I thought Lady Serena might want this," she said, unknowingly easing Frederick's immediate task. Still reeling from the encounter, Frederick, with a respectful bow, relieved the maid of the tray, ready to deliver the lady her requested repast. She left and shut the door behind her, a veil of privacy falling once more over the manor's inner sanctum. Outside, the maids, momentarily alone, engaged in hushed conversation, their voices a soft murmur against the grandeur of the estate's walls. "Is it tomorrow, then?" one maid ventured, her curiosity piqued by the looming date. "The day our master returns from his journey?" she pressed further, seeking confirmation or perhaps dreading the answer. "Yes," confirmed the second maid, her tone laden with a wisdom born of years spent under this roof. "And remember, it's Wednesday. Both their tempers will be as fragile as thin ice. Be vigilant and cater to their whims with utmost care," she advised, her words painting a picture of the delicate dance of service required on the morrow. "Pardon?" The first maid's confusion was palpable, her experience within the manor's walls not yet deep enough to navigate its undercurrents. "Our master will return wearied from his season-long sojourn, his energy spent and patience thin," the seasoned maid elaborated, her gaze distant, as if she could already foresee the events unfolding. "And Lady Serena, she will be none too pleased by his return. It disrupts the delicate balance she's maintained in his absence," she added, her voice a blend of empathy and resignation. Understanding dawned on the first maid, her earlier confusion giving way to a newfound comprehension. "Ah, so both will be on edge tomorrow. I see now. I'll tread lightly, ensuring not to ruffle any feathers," she promised, her determination to avoid any missteps clear in her voice. As the conversation waned, the second maid's eyes were drawn to the world outside the window, where the promise of the master's return seemed to whisper through the air itself. "With our master's return, Serenity Manor will soon be awash with the vibrant hues of red summer roses," she mused, a note of wistfulness in her tone. "A season bathed in the glow of crimson blooms, as vivid as blood and as resplendent as the setting sun, awaits us," she concluded, her words painting a picture of a future where beauty and tension coexisted, heralding the start of a rose-tinted summer. The rain beat relentlessly against the windows of the gloomy manor, setting a dreary backdrop for the unfolding drama within. The apprentice jeweler fidgeted nervously as she glanced at the antique clock on the wall, noting with growing apprehension that they were already 40 minutes late for their scheduled meeting. "Madam," she ventured tentatively, her voice barely above a whisper, "shouldn't she have arrived by now?" The madam shot her a quick, admonishing glance, a silent warning not to betray their unfamiliarity with the manor's customs. "Patience, child," she chided softly, masking her own unease. "These matters require delicacy and tact." But the apprentice couldn't shake the feeling of urgency gnawing at her. It suddenly dawned on her why her madam always closed their store when visiting this particular manor. Here dwelled the kingdom's most famous person, whose approval could make or break a career. Wide-eyed with realization, the apprentice turned to her madam. "Lady Serena," she breathed, her voice tinged with awe and nervousness. The madam nodded solemnly, her expression grave. "Indeed," she confirmed. "It is an honor beyond measure to have Lady Serena wear our creations." The apprentice swallowed hard, her nerves intensifying at the thought of meeting the celebrated figure. But why the delay, she wondered aloud, her curiosity getting the better of her. The madam offered a knowing smile, though her eyes betrayed a hint of amusement. "Ah, my dear, Lady Serena is known to indulge in the pleasures of life," she explained cryptically. "Perhaps she's enjoying a well-deserved rest after a night of merriment with her constant companion." "What? Lo ver?" The apprentice stammered, realization hitting her like a thunderbolt upon discovering that Lady Serena has a confidant who is always by her side. As if on cue, inside Lady Serena's chamber, a crack of thunder shattered the silence. Meanwhile, in the dimly lit room, Lady Serena stirred from her slumber, her head throbbing with a headache from the excesses of the night. Beside her, Frederick, with his chiseled features softened by concern, reached out to soothe her. "Sleep a bit more, the sound of rain is very pleasurable," he murmured, his voice gentle against the storm raging outside. "It's been raining since early morning." There's no sunshine, so it's a bit dark here. Last night you drank a lot, so you must have a bad headache now. Sleep a bit more, he said. But Lady Serena shook her head, determination etched on her features despite the ache in her temples. The jewelers are waiting, she insisted, her tone firm as she struggled to sit upright. Frederick's worry deepened as he observed her discomfort. Ah, so you have guests, he said, his concern palpable. But Lady Serena's resolve remained unshaken as she demanded the day's date. Frederick hesitated briefly before responding, a flicker of concern crossing his features as he noticed the tension in her grip on the sheets. Sensing her distress, Frederick moved closer, his touch gentle as he sought to offer her solace amidst the brewing storm, both inside and out. She brushes him off and tells him to go get ready. In the meantime, the apprentice waiting with her madam grows more impatient. As Lady Serena enters the room, her elegance and poise command attention. The madam rises promptly, offering a respectful greeting, while the apprentice is left in awe, her admiration evident in the way her gaze lingers on Serena's every move. Lady Serena, you're here, the madam said. My goodness, Lady Serena, she exclaimed. I must have kept you waiting. Serena replied. Oh no, not at all. Your servants have provided us with nice tea, so we were taking the time to relax, she said. As you already know, I close the store on the days I come to visit you. She said. Wow, so that's Serena Serenity. She looks amazing in person. I've only heard about her. I can't believe I'm seeing her up close, the apprentice thought. There is no need to close the store. Now that you have plenty of staff, you can simply leave it to them for half the day, Serena said as she put on gloves. The days I come to show you my jewels are special days for me. These are days I choose to dedicate to one client. I do not wish to have other clients on that day, the madam said. You said you wanted to see some necklaces for a party today? I'll show you what I've specially prepared. The madam continued. Meanwhile, footsteps were heard and Frederick entered. The apprentice was stunned and thought, wow, that must be him. My goodness. Dear God, he looks like a carefully sculpted piece of art. I've brought forth some exquisite necklaces for your consideration. Perfect for the party you mentioned, the madam said. Serena inspects the offerings with a discerning eye, her expression betraying little emotion as she examines each. I was expecting much more when you said you would bring something special, but a silent diamond, Serena said. Oh? But these are some of the finest silent diamonds available. The quality is impeccable, the madam said. Serena's disappointment is palpable as she shakes her head, her dissatisfaction evident. I appreciate your efforts, madam, but silent diamonds simply do not suit my taste, regardless of their quality, Serena said. The madam's attempt to sway Serena's opinion falls short as Serena's attention shifts. Meanwhile, the apprentice, captivated by the allure of Serena's lover, can't help but admire both his beauty and the palpable tension in the room. Serena's displeasure was palpable as she directed her sharp words towards the madam, demanding her to leave. Confusion painted the madam's expression, prompting Serena to gesture towards the unfamiliar apprentice accompanying her, noting that this wasn't the usual companion. The madam explained the situation, revealing the apprentice's status as new to the trade. With a discerning eye, Serena observed the apprentice's lack of enthusiasm for jewelry sales, subtly hinting at her distraction. Pretty, isn't it? Serena remarked, catching the apprentice stealing glances at her lover. Flustered, the apprentice hastily apologized upon realizing her indiscretion, but Serena's response was cold and cutting, questioning how anyone could resist the allure of beauty. Seizing the moment, Serena confronted the apprentice directly, pushing her lover to his knees before her. If you want to see him so badly, why don't you take a good look at him from up close? She said. So? Do you like what you see? She demanded, her tone laced with a mixture of intimidation and sarcasm. The apprentice, visibly frightened, continued to apologize, but Serena's anger simmered beneath the surface. In a moment of raw emotion, Serena turned her attention back to the trembling apprentice, her voice dripping with hostility. Do you also want what is mine? She spat, her words like venom. The apprentice, already trembling with fear, could only stammer out apologies as Serena coldly asserted her ownership, reminding the apprentice that her lover belonged to her regardless of his outward appearance. The apprentice's remorse was palpable as she bowed deeply, seeking forgiveness for her covetous behavior. With a graceful yet tense demeanor, the madam extended her apologies to Serena, keen to prevent any further escalation. Sensing the gravity of the situation, the madam swiftly ushered her contrite apprentice away from the manor, leaving Serena to contemplate the unsettling turn of events. As Serena retreated into the manor, her thoughts swirled with a mix of frustration and resignation. Sway, Serena's astute headmaid, observed the scene unfold and approached with a compassionate inquiry into Frederick's well-being. The lover, weathered by past encounters with the madam's volatile temperament, acknowledged the tension in the air. A realization dawned upon him: it was the day of the master's return. Against a backdrop of relentless rain, Serena traversed the corridors, her gaze drawn to the storm-ridden landscape beyond the window pane. The sight of a carriage emerging through the downpour evoked a sense of foreboding. It was the very weather that the lady of the house abhorred. Sway, mirroring Serena's dismay, lamented the unfortunate timing of the tempestuous weather, heightened by thunder and lightning. Beneath the shelter of an umbrella, a solitary figure alighted from the carriage, marking the return of the master of the house. His presence loomed ominously, casting a shadow over the already tense atmosphere. As Serena braced herself for the impending reunion, uncertainty lay ahead in the wake of his arrival. The tension in the room hung heavy, almost suffocating, despite the delicious spread laid out on the table. As the clinking of cutlery filled the air, Serena fidgeted with her cutlery, tapping her meal. The head maid and the master's secretary engaged in a hushed conversation, their voices barely rising above a whisper. "You must be tired after such a long trip, Raoul. Did everything go well during the trip?" the head maid inquired, her tone cautious. The secretary sighed, a faint smile forming on his face. "Yes, Miss Sway. Everything went smoothly. The tour. The meeting. Was everything at the manor okay?" "Yes," came Miss Sway's reply. A subtle shift in the atmosphere hinted at the unspoken undercurrents between them. It was a delicate dance around a shared secret, a truth that only a select few were privy to. Their conversation meandered towards the heart of the matter, the strained relationship between Serena and the master, Iser. It was a topic both familiar and uncomfortable, rooted in the turbulent history of their marriage. Speaking of the master, the secretary began tentatively as he sighed, "It's already been 4 years since they've been married, but I still get nervous on Wednesdays and Sundays when it's time for them to have dinner together." "Well, things are better than when they were first married," Sway said. "That's true. Especially that day when Lady Serena poured water on Sir Iser," the secretary said. "I could barely sleep that night because my heart wouldn't stop pounding." Indeed, that day they had that terrible argument, the head maid recalled, a faint wince of remembrance crossing her features. Even Sir Iser, who usually stays calm, argued back that day, and it ended with Lady Serena pouring water on the master in a fit of rage, while the secretary blocked her to prevent the water from touching the master, and I held Lady Serena back. Though the incident belonged to the past, its echoes reverberated through the present, casting a shadow over the tranquility they tried so desperately to maintain. "And yes," the secretary mused, "Lady Serena left immediately after that, but Sir Iser didn't even bat an eye. Right, compared to then, things are relatively quiet now. Though the quietness is also pretty unnerving as it is," the secretary continued. Oh no." Lady Serena ended her meal without eating almost anything again, the secretary said. "I wonder why they keep dining together every week when they're so uncomfortable with each other," the secretary continued. The headmaid replied. "Well, that's because the two of them are both the owners of Serenity. The Serenity family and the Serenity Hotel, which is the family business. They're both protecting Serenity in their own way. No matter how uncomfortable and unpleasant it may be, they are working to protect Serenity's reputation with the minimum amount of interaction possible," she continued. You know they both have their own reasons to protect Serenity. That's why they are willing to tolerate this time together, because of Serenity and for Serenity, the head maid said. That's the unspoken rule between our masters, she continued. In the quiet acknowledgement of their shared truth, a silent understanding passed between them. For Serena and Iser, their marriage was a sacrifice made in service of something greater than themselves, a legacy that demanded their allegiance even at the expense of their personal happiness. And so they continued to dine together, their strained silences punctuated by the clatter of cutlery and the weight of unspoken words, all in the name of Serenity. Serena's frustration simmered beneath her calm exterior as Iser finally broke the silence, mentioning the document that required her signature. Confusion swirled in her mind as she questioned why her signature was necessary when the family seal could suffice. Handle it on your own, Serena retorted, her tone laced with exasperation, reminding Iser of his autonomy in such matters. Yet her words fell on deaf ears as he summoned the head maid Sway. Yes, Sir Iser, the head maid replied. It looks like your master has trouble understanding me, so I'll leave my instructions with you, Iser said. There is some important business she needs to tend to, so make sure you escort her to the office in 1 hour, Iser continued as he stood up and left. Yes, Sir Iser, the head maid replied. Left alone in the dining room, Serena's mood soured further. She found herself pondering Iser's motives, a mix of curiosity and irritation bubbling within her. Later, when she found herself in Iser's office, he handed her the document without explanation. Sign this, Iser just said. Snatching it from his grasp, Serena's eyes scanned the contents, her thoughts swirling as she absorbed the implications. Iser's nonchalant demeanor only fueled her growing anger. You're going to discontinue the privileges we've been providing to the 8 families of the honorary committee at the end of this year, she demanded, her voice tight with emotion, the paper clenched in her hand. Iser's indifference grated on her nerves as he gestured toward the pen, his tone dismissive. Serena's fury ignited, her grip on the document tightening as she voiced her frustrations. She reminded him of the significance of the honorary committee, how it had been instrumental in the hotel's growth and held deep sentimental value for her family. The hotel was only able to grow because of their generous investment and guidance, as she said. That's why we've been sending gifts to show our gratitude to them every year on our hotel's anniversary. It's the tradition of our Serenity family to make sure they can continue to enjoy their privileges, she continued. Signing the document would mean more than just a simple formality, it would signify the abandonment of a cherished tradition upheld by generations of the Serenity family. Serena's voice hung heavy in the air, a silent challenge to Iser's disregard for their legacy. Serena's gaze bore into Iser's, her expression a mixture of incredulity and frustration. Iser leaned back in his chair, crossing his hands casually, but his demeanor betrayed a sense of firmness. Yes, I'm aware of the tradition, Serena, he replied evenly. Then how can you suggest something like this to me? Serena said. Why? Now that you have Serenity in your hands, do these traditions look like a joke to you? She continued. Just like you've inherited the hotel, it's their descendants that have inherited the privileges, to be precise, he said. Do you think their descendants are still interested in the operation and growth of your hotel? You have no interest in how they're using their privileges either. There's no contract detailing how much they're entitled to from their initial investment, he continued. Serena shook her head, her voice rising slightly. So, just because they've extended you kindness, you've been using the tradition as an excuse for the negligent management of the hotel. Expressing Serenity's gratitude towards them is also part of my duty. How their descendants use that privilege is up to them, she continued. Thanks to the tradition, we've been maintaining a good relationship with the 8 families, as she said. Iser's expression softened, his eyes reflecting a hint of frustration as he swiveled the chair he sat on. But Serena, I wonder if they feel the same way, he said. Serena's brows furrowed, thinking, he's doing it again. It's that look again. Gritting her teeth, she slammed away the document, her tone defiant, and said, of course, the likes of you wouldn't understand. The long-time bond you're trying to break with this single piece of paper. She clenched the table and continued. Did you really expect me to sign this? Isar just looked at her nonchalantly as they both gazed at each other. Meanwhile, outside the confines of the office, Sway and Raoul exchanged worried glances, their thoughts mirroring each other's. Raoul was seen saying to the headmaid, he said he only needed a signature, so I wonder what's taking them so long. The headmaid replied, I'm afraid I don't know. The secretary continued while fretting, could it be that they're fighting again? The headmaid replied, well, they finished their meals in peace. What could happen? I'm sure they'll be out soon. The secretary said. Right. Even though they dislike each other, it's their first meeting after a really long time apart. Their speculations continued, voices hushed as they mulled over the possibilities. But before they could delve deeper into their musings, Sway was abruptly summoned back into the fray. They wouldn't fight, the secretary was saying before he was interrupted, and both of them turned to look at the person calling Sway. Isar sat behind the imposing desk, his demeanor a blend of authority and impatience as he watched Serena, his tone clipped and commanding. Pick up the document and sign it and leave. We don't have time for your games. Serena, her eyes flashing with defiance, squared her shoulders. Refusing to capitulate, she resolved firmly as she met his gaze head-on. How dare you tell me to leave? This office used to belong to my grandmother and my mother. The fact that you're sitting in my mother's place and using her desk is infuriating enough, she thought. You're the one that should get out of my house, she said angrily. Isar's jaw tightened, his patience wearing thin. He rose from his seat, closing the distance between them with purpose. Leaning in, he spoke with a steely edge to his voice. You seem to forget that I don't have the time to deal with your every objection. I simply need your signature to do my job, and that's all I need, he continued. Leaning in more so that their faces almost touched, he said, so just sign it. Serena's defiance didn't waver as she sneered and moved to retrieve the document from the table. But instead of complying, she smirked and said, oh no, ripping the paper to shreds before Isar's eyes, and continued saying, it seems you won't be needing my signature anymore, now will you? Her voice dripped with satisfaction, a challenge laid bare as she sprayed the pieces of the document in the air and said, don't you agree? In the midst of their fervent exchange, Raoul's interruption sliced through the tension like a knife. He announced, Sir Isar, Lady Serena, as Isar just gazed at her. What is it, Raoul? Isar inquired. We have a guest, Raoul said. We're not expecting anyone today. Isar said. Whoever it is, send them away, he continued. Temporarily diverted from their conversation, Isar approached Serena, assuring her that their discussion was far from over as they looked into each other's eyes, tension brewing. But before they could resume, Raoul interjected once more, revealing the identity of the guest, Lady Iansa's Serenity. With an air of elegance and grace, Lady Iansa made her entrance, Serena's grandmother and the esteemed founder of the Serene Hotel. My goodness, the weather is quite dreadful today, she said. Isar greeted her warmly, initiating a conversation that flowed effortlessly between them. What brings you here at this time, through this harsh weather, he asked. I heard you were returning from your business trip today, so I wanted to come see if you were well, she said. I'm sorry this old lady came to bother you. You must be exhausted from the trip, she continued. I simply thought it would be nice to see you, and I also have something I want to give to you, she said. In his hospitality, Isar extended an offer for Lady Iansa to stay the night, a gesture she graciously declined. She must be fairly tired right now considering her fragile health. She's probably refusing because of Serena, he thought. It's because Serena is uncomfortable with her grandmother staying, he thought. That stubborn girl won't even come greet me, will she? The grandmother asked. Why don't we go inside? Allow me to escort you, he said. Of course, she replied. As Isar prepared to escort Lady Iansa inside, Serena's voice broke through the air. Grandma, you've been cheated by that man, she said. The grandma was stunned at first and turned. Serena, with an indifferent face, said, he just handed me the most ridiculous document ever and he tried to force me into signing it. He said he would cut off all the privileges that we're offering to the 8 families. That man is trying to get rid of the tradition that you and Mother tried so hard to keep, she lamented. You've made a huge mistake by meddling with the 8 families, she thought. I suppose he can't see down the road because he's so focused on the loss that's caused by them every year, she continued. I know how important this matter is to Grandma. Even though she's not involved in our business anymore, she'll never let this happen, she thought. Do you still think it was a good idea to leave Serenity in his hands? She asked. The grandmother paused and asked, Is that true? Her eyes searching for truth in Iser's gaze. He did not deny his actions, and in that moment there was a silent acknowledgement between them. Surprisingly, the grandmother, instead of erupting in anger, chuckled and said, The 8 families, when it comes to them, things are so complicated that I didn't know where to start. It looks like you've decided to deal with that problem, she said. She turned to Iser and said, Good. It was something that needed to be done. Serena, observing her grandmother's unexpected reaction, felt a mix of confusion and curiosity. What, she thought. Let's continue to discuss that inside, Lady Iansa said. Certainly, Lady Iansa, came his reply. Good, she thought, confused at her grandma's reply. How is that good? How could Grandma of all people say something like that? She thought. She couldn't help but reminisce about sweeter times when her grandmother was deeply involved in the affairs of the hotel. Grandma, her younger self called out with a smile on her face. My goodness, my little ribbon princess. How about your ballet class? The grandma asked. It's over, she replied. What is this? Are you studying too, Grandma? She questioned her grandma. Why don't you take a look? The grandma said. The hotel anniversary guest list, she said with a focused gaze. Good job, Serena. You remember, don't you? That's the day when our family has fun with the guests at our hotel once a year, the grandma said. Yes. A lot of my friends do come that day, she said. That's right. I'm inviting my friends to the hotel too, her grandma said. It's a very important day, so I was making sure your mother did a good job, sweetie, her grandma continued. Her reminiscence ended. Ha! She's definitely gone senile, she said. But now, since her forced marriage to Iser, Serena couldn't shake the feeling that her grandmother had lost her senses. She continued. Feeling a surge of fury, Serena fled to the solace of her lover's arms, calling out his name, Frederick. Frederick, trembling with emotion. Frederick, sitting by a window, was stunned. He saw her trembling with emotion, immediately sprang up. Lady Serena, he said emotionally as he strode towards her. Did something happen? He asked her as she dashed to hug him, leaving him speechless. She's trembling, he thought. Did something happen in the office? He asked and pats her on the back to console her. In her lover's embrace, Serena laid blame upon Iser. I wish he would die, that man, she said. He's changed everything. Our house, our hotel, and even Grandma. I feel like I don't even know my grandmother anymore. Why did he have to come out of nowhere and take everything from me? That's not fair, she lamented as her body trembled from too many emotions. Serenity is all I have. I lost everything and serenity is all that is left. So why? Why, she said. She thought, whenever I'm facing him, he makes me feel like my very existence is useless. As her tears drop. Especially when he's staring at me with that look in his eyes. It drives me off the edge. He looks at me like I'm a pathetic fool, a clueless child. With a look of scorn in his eyes as if he expects nothing of me, and I just can't stand that, she thought. I wish this was all a dream. I wish this would all go away, Frederick, she said as she pounded on Frederick's chest. My heart. It's beating so fast I'm scared, she said, breathing fast as she clenched her chest. Frederick, what do I do? She said as she staggered back. My heart is beating so fast I feel like I might die. What if I die like this? She said. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she gazed into her lover's eyes and said, "What if I die?" seeking solace from the pain inflicted by Iser's indifference. As she poured out her heartache, her lover gently reached out to kiss her, offering a moment of respite from the torment inflicted by Iser's indifference. How will this story unfold? Stay tuned. Thank you for being part of this adventure with us. If you enjoyed what you watch, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. The next episode holds even more excitement and twists, so stay with us as we continue this thrilling journey together. Until then, keep the anticipation alive, and we'll see you in the next episode.